This video is just going to review how to use your graphing calculator to make a graph, look at the table of values, and get some values from your graph. I have a TI-84 graphing calculator, but a TI-83 should work very similar to this. If you've got a different graphing calculator, you might have to do some Googling, read the manual, or you can come and check with me and I can help you figure it out. So first, to graph on this calculator, I'm going to press this button right here, the Y equals button, and it'll bring up this screen right here. Now you can see I can plug in a lot of different equations into my graphing calculator at once. Since I don't have a fancy graphing calculator with different colors and stuff, those are much more expensive. I usually like to graph no more than 2 equations at a time so I can tell the difference between them. I've already plugged an equation into my graphing calculator. I'm just going to clear it to show you what I did to do that. So it's pretty simple. You just plug in the buttons that match the equation that you want to plug in. So in this case, I would plug 0.6, tap this little X button right here to get X, my X squared right there to get the squared. And in this case, then this is followed by plus 3, X again, and 2. Pause it here if you need to make sure you have the equation right. To see the equation on the graph, I simply press this graph button, and my graph pops up and it draws my graph for me. Now, my calculator can help me get a few different values that are going to be kind of tricky to get otherwise. By math, it'll be much faster and potentially more accurate. So first, I'm going to go over how to find your y-intercept, where your graph crosses that y-axis right here. That one's pretty easy. You just want to look in what's called the table of values. To get there, you press your second key and your graph button again, because you'll notice just above it in blue, it's kind of blurry on mine, it says table. And it'll bring up a nice little table of values for you. For different values of x, their corresponding values of y. So then I would just use my arrow keys to scroll up and down to see the different values. To find my y-intercept, I just have to see what y is when x equals 0. So you can see in this case, y equals 2 when x equals 0. Finding my x-intercepts, if I go back to my graph here, is a little bit trickier. You can guess it by using this trace button here. If I press it, you can see I have a little flashing cursor, and I can move it with my arrow keys back and forth. Now you could try to get it as close as possible to that x-axis to guesstimate it, but as you can see, it's not perfect. But there is a way that my calculator can help me guess what my x-intercepts will be. Notice that on this graph I have 2. So let's find this leftmost one first. To find this x-intercept, what we're going to do is press second here, and that trace button. You'll notice above it, it says calc. It'll bring up a screen that looks like this. To find an x-intercept, we're actually going to select this 0 function here. You can select this in one of 2 ways. You can either scroll down like this and hit enter, or you can simply hit 2 on your calculator, because you notice that 2 is the number that's next to it. When that happens, it'll pop up with a screen like this. The first thing it'll say is ask you left bound. What that means is it's asking you to put the cursor to the left of the intercept you want to find. So in this case, we're looking for this one. The closer you put it to your x-axis, the more accurate your calculator will be. So in this case, I'm just going to make sure I can see it. See it's just above my x-axis or to the left of it. I'll hit enter. Now it will ask me right bound. So then I would go to the right of my of my x-intercept, or just below my x-axis. And again, the closer you are to your axis, the more accurate your calculator will be. So now you can see I'm below. I'll hit enter again. Your calculator will ask you guess, and you'll hit enter. And you can see that it has guessed for a y value of 0 for this intercept. It's negative 4.207 and so on. If I ever were to ask you to use your calculator to find this, I would say you would round it to the nearest 0.1 or 0.2 decimal places. So I'm just going to quickly go over that again by finding my other x-intercept. So I'm going to press second, calc, 2 for my 0, or I could scroll down and hit enter. Now I'm looking for my other one, so I'm going to go as close as I can while still being to the left or below that x-axis. Hit enter. Now it will ask me right, so I'll go just above it. Hit enter. Guess. And my calculator has guessed that the other x-intercept happens when x equals negative 0.79 and so on. The other useful thing that you can find with your calculator that can be difficult to calculate sometimes is your vertex if you're not given the quadratic equation in vertex form. So we're going to go back to calc, second calc or second trace, and we're going to be looking for either the minimum or the maximum. In our case, our graph opened upwards, which means it has a minimum value. So I'm going to select that one. Now it's asking me left bound. So I want to scroll just to the left of where my vertex is. The closer I am to my vertex, the more accurate my calculator will be able to be. I'll hit enter. Now I'll go to the right. I will hit enter again. It will ask guess. I'll hit enter. And my calculator estimates that for this graph, the vertex happens when x is equal to negative 2.500003 and y is negative 1.75. The other thing I just want to quickly show you is how to change the window or the view of your graph, because sometimes you'll plug in an equation and notice that it doesn't quite fit within the view that you've got set. So I'm going to show you what I mean by a different equation. So I'm going to go back to my y equals to see my equations. I'm going to clear this one. I'm just going to quickly enter a new equation. This one is negative 0.4 x squared plus 7.2 x minus 14. I'll hit graph. And you'll notice that my whole graph doesn't really come up and it doesn't fit on my screen. So to change that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press this window key right here. It'll give me values for what my x will be and my y, and by how many points each of them is going to go up. So I'm just going to change these to make my window a bit bigger. Instead of my x minimum being negative 10, I'm going to change it to negative 20. I'm going to change my x maximum to 20, and I'm going to put my x to go up by values of 2. And I'm going to do the same thing for my y. I'm going to go negative 20, positive 20, and 2. Once that's done, I'm going to hit graph again. And this time, you'll see that I'm able to see my vertex and my graph much better. So if this ever happens to you when you're putting in an equation, remember to check that window function. You can make it smaller, make it bigger, but usually you should make sure that you reset it to negative 10, 10, going up by ones, because that's the most standard view. And that's what you'll want to start with, and then you'll want to change it as you go. More videos will come for other functions of your calculator, but that's it for now. If you want to watch again and follow along or practice with different equations, feel free, because the more you use your calculator, the more useful it will be to you.